You have to believe in yourself. One of the things that I wish I would have done, being able to share and talk about your feelings.
So much value in that, to be able to connect.
You have to raise your hand and say, I need help.
Part of your story involved a mentor.
What I saw through the entrepreneurship is the flexibility of time.
Today, it is my pleasure to interview Warsaw Del Rosario.
You have to come with your A game daily.
I love that, man.
You're going to want to quit. You're going to want to just give up, but don't. You can make it through anything.
What's up, everybody? I'm Devin Ramos, your host of Diehard Entrepreneur Stories, and today it is my pleasure to interview one of my fellow Special Forces brethren, Warsaw Del Rosario. He is a retired Special Operations soldier who served 16 years in the U.S. Army as a Ranger and a Green Beret. Born in Tijuana, Mexico, and raised in Southern California, he has a journey that reflects resilience and adaptability. Following his military career, he transitioned into entrepreneurship, starting a brick and mortar airsoft store and later becoming the co-founder of Military to Entrepreneur, a platform dedicated to helping veterans and civilians turn their ideas into successful businesses. He also co-owns Sentry Trading Post, a free listening platform for veteran-owned businesses. He's currently writing a book about resilience and finding purpose after the military. His mission is to empower others to overcome challenges, redefine their paths, and build meaningful success. Today, you'll get to hear about his journey. Welcome, Warsaw.
Devin, thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Of course, man. I'm so stoked to have you. Like I was telling you pre-show, man, today I get to hear more about your journey. We haven't got to really sit down and talk too much about it, and ultimately catch up with one of my good SF friends, dude. So I'm stoked, man. Thank you so much for being here. So before we jump into it, I remember you shared a little bit of your background with me. I always remember you had a really powerful story. I know you grew up originally in Tijuana and then in Southern California. Warsaw, I'd be interested to know, hindsight being 2020, as you look back now from where you're at, how did, growing up the way you did, if you'd like to share some of that, that'd be great. How did that shape ultimately like what you've turned into and your journey so far?
So I was born in Tijuana, Mexico, and I lived there until El Nino hit and destroyed our house. It was flooded. My dad was working at the shipyards in San Diego. He was a prior Marine. And when my mom made the call, dad rushed back to Tijuana, and they had to pick my sister and me up, throw us over their shoulders, and wade the water up the hill to get us to safety. And that's where we moved to San Diego. My grandma had a house, a duplex that we got to move into. We lived there shortly before moving up to Los Angeles, where I spent the next 4 years. It was very powerful, impactful moment that, when you think you have it all and you're young and life is just normal, and then a natural disaster hits and it just changes the course of your life, right? And one thing that was always instilled in me as a young kid was the American dream. As long as you work hard, you put in the hours, you put in the effort, that you could make it. You could have the dog named Lassie. You could have the nice house, the perfect family with a white picket fence out front. And that's something that I always tried to strive to attain in my life. So it was interesting, and we didn't have very much money growing up. I remember taking a shopping cart with my mom and going down to the Catholic church every Sunday and getting food for the week. It was rough. There was a point where there was about 12 of us living in a 1-bedroom apartment with my mom's brothers, their wives, my cousins. And so it was very humble beginnings. And then, as I was in middle school and high school, we lived in the same apartment complex for 9 years before I joined the military at 17 years old. It was something that I knew I always wanted to do. I wanted to serve. Both my grandfathers, my biological and step grandfather, served in the United States Navy. They retired. I saw that it was possible. It was one of the things that I always told my dad, like, I kind of held him accountable of like, man, you should have stayed in. Things would have been different, right? But, we all have to make our decisions. I think he made the right decision getting out, and, it was now my turn to do something and serve my country. Initially, I wanted to join the Marine Corps. My dad said, hey, you've got to go your own path. You got to go your own path. So what I did was, did some research. I was in JROTC. I had a very great mentor, Master Sergeant retired Larry Molesky, and he helped me through the process. I was able to get a option 40 contract, which is a Ranger contract. My parents signed on the dotted line and waived since I was 17 years old, and I shipped off to Fort Benning, Georgia. Became, after going through the training, the rigorous training, the Ranger indoctrination program, I made it, and I got assigned to 2nd Ranger Battalion, where I kind of started my military career. But those humble beginnings really shaped my mindset of you could have everything and lose it all at once, but you don't give up. You never quit. You might be an underdog, but you got to persevere and remain consistent and just fight through it, because you know what you're worth. You know what you could give back to others, your community, or your nation. And you just have to stick to it.
Part of your story involved a mentor. And that's not something I hear a ton from others, like at a stage in their life prior to entrepreneurship, right? When I look at you, having interacted with you, I see you as a mentor, man. That's something like you naturally become people's mentor. That's one thing I've noticed. Dude, tell me a little bit about that. How did you meet that mentor? How did he come into your life? And do you think that's what kind of shaped you going in on an option 40 versus, any other one of the 100 other jobs you could have signed for?
I was involved with the Junior Reserve Officer Training Corps, JROTC, at my high school. I was a knucklehead, freshman, sophomore year, to the point where I got in trouble and I got shipped off back to Mexico by my parents to live with my grandparents.
Yeah.
I spent nearly a year there. All of summer, I went to school there, and that was it shaped me a lot. It really showed me the values and the opportunities that existed here in the United States of America. I had to pay to go to school in Mexico. I had to go to night school because there's two different ones, two different sessions of school that you could go to. And it was just very different. It was very, very different. Life was tough. There's the running water doesn't exist it just runs all the time. No, there's, the state controls the political entities there control when water flows. So on Tuesdays, you have to turn everything on, fill up your tanks. You have to go manually turn on the boiler, just take a hot shower, and you better be quick, right? Because there's other people that got to shower as well. It was just very, very different. And when it was time to come back home, right? End of junior year, going into my senior year, I got back to living with my parents. And then from that point on, I was a 4.0 student. I really knew that, hey, here's another opportunity to strive for the American dream. You can't mess this up. And when I got back into the JROTC program, this mentor, Master Sergeant retired Larry Molesky, took me under his wing. He had heard, I messed up, knucklehead. He knew what type of area I came from, where I grew up, different things that you could get into that aren't good for you. And he saw something in me. He saw the potential. That's really the first time anybody ever saw potential in me, and then took the time to take me under their wing, mentor me, talk to me about the military, because that's something I always wanted to do, and then set me on the right track. He was the first person to give me a Ranger handbook. He had me memorize the Ranger Creed over the Cadet Creed and reciting it on weekends, even though you probably shouldn't have, but I was learning, different battle drills and how to cloverleaf and who goes up to check on the objective and pull back and what an ORP was. And he said, hey, just read this book. It may not make any sense to you right now, but sooner or later it will. And then, because my parents, my dad did join the Marine Corps, but he was out of touch with all the militaries and recruiting and stuff like that my mentor took us, hand walked us into the recruiting station and said, He's getting an option 40 contract. You're not going to screw this kid over. And if there's any issues, then I'll be in touch. So he kind of greased the skids, got me the option 40 contract. And as I graduated and before I shipped off, the one thing that he told me, just for training purposes, he just drove home the fact that you're going to have a gut check. One of the days that you're in Ranger school or in your training, it's going to be a gut check. It's going to be something that you're going to want to quit. You're going to want to just give up, but don't. That's going to be the day that it's a gut check. You just have to make it through that one day. The interesting thing is every time I thought it was a gut check and I made it through that day, I was like, then that must have not been the gut check.
Yeah.
The gut check's really
gut
coming.
Check's coming.
Right? Yeah, okay. It's really going to come now. And it's just something that always told me, in the back of my head of, you can make it through anything, physically, mentally, emotionally. It's going to be a gut check in life. Just persevere, keep pushing. You've got this. So that was something that he imparted in me that I've held on to for the rest of my life.
I love it. Shout out to Larry, man. That's awesome, man. Shout out to your parents for shipping you off. I look at that and, as I got little ones, I just think about how I have to be very careful because I want to raise them up. I want to train them. I want them, to grow and learn from my mistakes. But at the same time, life is hard. It looks different for everybody. And those that experience, the worst part of life, for the most part, grow the most from what I see. And so it's almost like as a parent, it's a balance to expose my kids to hard things and let them fail and let them see the trial and tribulation that, exists in the world, while also, coaching them, mentoring them, raising them up and protecting them. And that is a challenge. So for your parents to say, "Nah, Warsaw, you done it this time," send you off to hard living, man, what a blessing, At least that's from my perspective. That's how I'm looking at it now.
No, absolutely. With kids myself, my daughter 13, Rena, and Berlin, he's 9. It'd be tough. It's something that I think about, like, you just don't know what kids will get into, who they're hanging out with. It's important to be, that intrusive leadership in the military, right? Be an intrusive parent to a degree, give them their space, because you always want that open line of communication. But it's something that you have to consistently communicate with them, let them know right from wrong. And usually, they're going to have to learn on their own. But the goal is to keep them out of as much trouble and set them on the right path, because they don't have to endure any of the hardships that we've already went through, right? That was on us to carry on and live through and then impart that knowledge to our children. So that's all a parent could ask for, is that, you have open line of communication and they're able to do better than us and not trip and fall over the same obstacles that we had, through we self-induce ourselves. Right. So
yeah, dude, absolutely, man. That's good stuff. So now I remember you were a RIP graduate. Is that right? You say graduate? It was just RASP now. I'm sure that was an experience. I mean, just off the top of your head, anything that you really remember from RIP that maybe you brought into entrepreneurship or later in life when facing adversity?
There's probably 2 things. There's one physically. The physical one was, we overhydrated. What was put out wasn't what should have been put out, and we were drinking a quart of water every hour on the hour till about midnight before conducting our Doughboy run, which is just an arduous run. They're really going to just do you in physically. And a lot of people were passing out, and I stayed up with the first group of running. And by the time we got back to the grass, I was so dehydrated, no electrolytes in our systems.
Flushed it.
That I was licking the grass just for a little bit of the dew off the grass for a little bit of water. It was bad. It was really bad. That was one thing of, you could put your body through whatever it needs to go through as long as you want it bad enough. And at the time, there's nothing more important in life for me than earning the tan beret and becoming a ranger. The second thing was seeing one of the instructors' professionalism. It was just, when you look at these guys back when I was a private, these guys are giants. They are just they've been war tested, battle tested giants, and we look up to them. We respect them. They have a wealth of knowledge. They're the ones putting us through the training. And to see this Sergeant First Class E7 stand at parade rest for a first sergeant that was there, just visiting, checking in on the training, I said, "Wow!" Like, I thought the higher rank you get, the less military bearing you would have, right? Because you're already a senior. But he was standing at parade rest, and he won the instructor of the cycle because of his professionalism. He never really dogged us on things that we didn't need to be dogged on, and he really set the standard for us to follow. So that's something that I've always I've kept with me, of like, that professionalism. Doesn't matter if you're talking to a janitor. It doesn't matter if you're talking to a CEO. You should treat everyone with respect as a human being, and you show that, and in return, they'll show respect back. So I think that's something that's helped me out in my entrepreneurial career.
I love that, man. Oh, good stories there. And that, man, that foresight duration thing is bringing back memories for sure.
Memories.
That was a thing in the Marine Corps too, not in the Army, but I remember, and I think it's partially ignorance, partially like, I don't know, man, maybe poor leadership. But I think that the idea is, hey, they need to drink a lot of water because they're about to do hard things. So let's kind of work this into our routine, right? Without a full understanding of like, no, we're flushing their systems right now, and this is not what we should be doing. We had a very, very similar story, somebody falling out. So you had mentioned giants, man, and that hit me hard too, because I don't know if we've ever talked about this. You were in second bat. Were you in second bat with Joe Gibson? Do you know Joe Gibson?
I do know Joe Gibson. Yes.
Okay, cool. I figured. So for our audience, my boy Warsaw pretty much knows everybody. No, Warsaw, you're a huge networker. You're awesome people person, man. And there's very few people that I'll encounter that have been your way. And I'm like, hey, do you know Warsaw? And they're like, no, very few. Most people do know you. So, yeah, man, speaking of giants, I think you had brought that up, and I was thinking about where I was at as you're going through this training and doing your sort of thing, right? And I know roughly the timeline. I don't know exactly. I just know roughly. But I remember, Joe Gibson coming out in an article. I cannot remember what magazine it was. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. So just for our audience real quick, Joe Gibson was a fellow Ranger with Warsaw. They were in Iraq getting into some stuff. He actually steps on an Al-Qaeda dude, goes hand to hand with this guy. And the story we read, I think, is a little different than the actual story, but I don't know, maybe not. But this dude was awarded a Silver Star for this, right? And I remember I read that. This was right before I actually had shipped to go to boot camp for the Marine Corps. And I remember reading that, and I was just like, dude, this is where it's at. Like, all I wanted to do was serve. And so I was like, if I'm going to serve, I'm going to serve with infantry. And I just reading that, I was just like, oh my gosh, man. I hope that that's how I can impact people. I remember thinking. And so later on in life, to serve with Joe Gibson and then be like, see him one day and be like, whoa, what? I didn't even know. Okay, cool. Was just wild, because I remember there before I knew a thing about the military, and this guy's out there crushing it. And so when you say giants, that's what I think about, man. And he's also a professional, right? And so to be able to do the things that we do, but then also, hold like the highest professionalism, it's a thing you can't really explain to people. You have to experience it. I can totally see how that differentiates you is a business person, because, I know, at least for me, when you talk to people like that, sometimes they're not used to it. And it's like, whoa, it's like pleasantly surprising for them. Right. But for us, if you know the backside of it, it's like, you don't know any other way. Why would you operate any other way?
Right.
I don't know if you feel that, but yeah, man.
Absolutely. And as you talk about Joe and his story, it started bringing back, the memories and watching the video footage afterwards. That was powerful. He saved a lot of people by stepping on this bad guy, and then having to go to hand combat with him. He had went to Vanguard, which was a course held in Chicago. I ended up going to that one after the fact. After that situation,
probably after that, everybody wanted to go,
Everybody had to go. Yeah, it was one of the things that, hey, this just saved countless lives. And when the guy's reaching down, going bomb, 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 and Joe has to react to that while getting his nods pulled down from his helmet, and then take action, that's just incredible. It goes right into entrepreneurship as well, right? Like, sometimes you get bogged down with bad things that are happening, or things that will kind of have you quit or something, but you have to be a person of action. You have to bear down and take action, because that's the only way you're going to succeed, especially when your life's on the line. And I think that's really what Ranger Regiment instilled in me personally, is take action. Don't hesitate, right? Deal in solutions, not problems. And you have to come with your A game daily, because there's somebody right behind you that if you don't show up with your A game, they're ready to take your spot. And that it was a very competitive environment, right? Competition breeds excellence. And it was a great place to grow up and take those skills with me along my military career and now into entrepreneurship.
I love that. And I remember even talking to you several years later, both as we're Green Berets, how you told me some stories, right? And how you were leveraging those as now, in 18 Echo, looking to become an 18 Fox. And I'm sure you continued that later on when you became an operations sergeant and everything like that as well. So, yeah, man, that's so cool. So you spent some time in Ranger Bat. You did some things, a lot of good things, I'm sure. I would love to share here if we had the time. And then you decided to go to selection. I don't know if I ever asked you, but what was your reasoning? Like, why did you want to go to selection?
After 3 tours to Iraq, I developed a heavy drinking problem.
Oh, okay.
Very heavy drinking problem.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't dealing with the issues as I should have. I didn't raise my hand, and I was stuck in that era of just keep pushing. Charlie Mike, continue mission. There's no time to take a knee and face out and drink water. There's no time for that. Why? Because we're in a deployment cycle. You're coming back, you're training for 6 months, and then you're deploying anywhere between 3 to 5 months. So, and it's nonstop. You get back, you go on leave for 2 weeks, and then we're going right back to training. Why? Because we're about to go to war. And the guy to the left and right of you, they're dependent on you to be at 100% and switched on, because that's going to be the difference maker when you're deployed and you're in contact with the enemy. So I didn't take the time to really address some issues. I joined at 17. When I turned 18, I was in, I got deployed to Iraq. At 19, I was in Iraq. 20, I was at Iraq. So those issues compound, and you have to show up with your A game daily. So you can't let it phase you. So what you end up doing is, you drink till 4 o'clock in the morning when you're a private. You do the common areas, you clean everything, you get ready for the day, and you're out PTing by 06:30. No excuses. That's what you want to do the night prior. Now you got to pay the piper, come PT.
Yep.
Right. So I got in trouble. I was in Ranger Regiment, released for standards, and I went to the conventional Army. It was a hard time. It was something that, it was very difficult. When you have these shared stories and shared experiences with a tight-knit community, right? With your fellow Rangers, your fellow soldiers, right? Once you get removed from that, those stories only live within you. Those experiences, the joke and the dark humor in the military, where you're able to deal with this type of stuff, it's all on you. Now that you feel isolated, secluded, and pushed away, you have to deal with it on your own. So I just fell into now, instead of just drinking because of the mental health issues I was going through, then it went into depression, right? So it compounded and I had to claw my way out. And then that's, I was blessed to have First Sergeant Spear be another mentor of mine. He looked at me and said, yes, you screwed up. You're here now, but there's a lot of potential. You can't just be a dirtbag now. You got to step up. Right. So remember Abrams' charter. There's a lot of Rangers that had to leave regiment to go out to the conventional force and increase that standard of what they learned through Ranger Regiment. So it's going out, sharing those experiences, that knowledge. That way it doesn't just get, funneled into one location and that's it. It has to get spread out. So I took that to heart. And I started rocking and rolling, started getting, all these cool guys schools, competed in Best Ranger. And then for whatever reason, guys would always tease and say, well, Ranger deployments are super short. So I had it dead set in my mind that I had to go on a long conventional deployment just to prove myself. Yeah. So that's when I went over to First ID in Kentucky. I ended up deploying with them for 10 months and we were SOTF West Uplift. So here I am. Here I am wearing, all the conventional force gear, the standard, the growing thing, the neck collar, the shoulder stuff. And it just seeing these guys, these ODAs, third group, loading up and heading out to catch a helicopter ride to go do some bad things to bad dudes. I was like, I'm missing out. I need to go to selection. I belong in the special operation force community. That's where I'm going to thrive. And that's where I'm going to get, the gratification, the self-gratification of being in those type of units, operating at that level and having that level of impact. Mm-hmm. Right. And 9 days later, after redeploying from Afghanistan, I was at selection. Nice. And because the unit was shutting down in Kentucky over at Fort Knox, I was able to, within 2 months, head over to the Q course and knock it out. So that's really something that when I put my mind to it, I was like, hey, we've got to rock and roll. I've got to get, in the craziest shape of my life and then just go knock it out of the park, get selected and get over to an SF unit.
That's good, man. Yeah, I was going to say 9 days later. So you trained up over in Afghanistan. My man, kudos to you. That's some good stuff. Yeah. I love it. You've had an awesome career so far. You got to do some really cool things. At what point does entrepreneurship come into play? I mean, was that kind of something always in the background that you knew about? Or tell me a little bit about that.
I'm over at 7th Group. I move in to a neighborhood with an awesome neighbor that lived right across the street. And we just started chatting a lot, right? We started talking. He ended up becoming one of my best friends and eventually my business partner. But he ran his own handyman company. Nice. So I saw
He wasn't military, or was he military?
He was not military. His dad served 30 years in the United States Air Force. Oh, so nice. He had close ties to the military, but he never served himself. What I saw through the entrepreneurship of him owning his own business is the flexibility of time. He was able to coach his kids in soccer. He was able to he didn't miss anything. He didn't miss anniversaries, birthdays. He was always there. He never missed a holiday. And that's something that I kind of envied, right? Not good, but sure. it was like, I want that too.
Especially
I want to do all this
point, right?
stuff in the military. Yeah, I want to do all this stuff in the military, but I also want all the family time. Yeah. Right. And then just to see like how you could scale businesses or not scale them and be in somewhat of a comfort zone, right? Like just right where it's paying the bills, you're getting stuff done, you have plenty of time, you're still able to coach. Those are things that entice me into entrepreneurship. So we tried doing something in the garage one day, and that was making t-shirts. So we ended up ordering all the kit the whole kit set up with the lamp and the screens and some blank t-shirts. And we started messing around. And that was like I was dipping my toe in the water of entrepreneurship, just kind of checking it out. It didn't pan out. It was something that was fun. We made some t-shirts for ourselves and our families, and it just stuck with me. I was still deploying at that point over to Afghanistan and then Central and South America.
As you were saying that, I was thinking about that. I do remember you making merchandise, and I don't know if this was at the same time, but I actually bought a bracelet for you. We have a mutual friend that was killed in action, and I remember you were making those. I still have that. That's pretty cool, man. And so that was like the bug biting you, right? Was that where you're like, I mean, did you know right away? Were you like, okay, eventually I'm going to get out of the military at some point. This is what I'm going to do? Or was it, how can I do more of this on the side and keep doing the military?
A little bit of the latter. It was, I have one of my best friends and business partners, or potential business partner at the time, that has the time and availability to do things. I have the drive, the strategical planning, I want to do it. I just don't know how to do it. If you could kind of coach me through some of the stuff, I'll be value added. Right. So it was something that I still needed to learn. I thought I was going to do 30 years. I really did. It was, and that's one of the things where it gets into, I chose career over family, and it wasn't really good. It wasn't good. I did the entrepreneurship chip stayed at the back of my head of like, I need more of the family time. Like that's what will give me the family time. That will give me the opportunity to gain financial independence. That will allow me to take the family on trips to go see the world and see things that I was fortunate enough through the military's dime to go check out and experience, because those experiences don't mean anything when it's just you. I was fortunate enough to go see Machu Picchu twice in a 3-week span.
Yeah.
That was awesome. It was incredible,
yeah.
Right? Not a lot of people get to see one of the 7 wonders of the world, but it's, it didn't mean as much because the kids weren't there, my wife wasn't there, and I don't have that shared familial experience. So entrepreneurship definitely stayed at the back of my mind of, one day I will pursue something. I don't know what it's going to be, but it's going to be something, and I'm going to make it great.
I love that, man. And that's so well said. There's been several times I've talked to my wife about her and I just going to the Middle East because, I'm fortunate to see some really cool things, but I mean, I maybe almost even took them for granted a little bit because it's not, I'm just like, man, I'm over here to do work. Yes, this is great, but like, I'm over here to do work. And it's not, you don't have your family to experience with it. Like, yeah, you got other guys there, but it is different for sure. So I totally get that. You decide, hey, this is something that's going to be long lasting. Don't immediately decide to get out at that point. I don't know if, the writing was on the wall. You kind of knew that your career in the military was going to end, or you didn't. But talk to me a little bit about the progression of going from doing both to, all right, now I got to prepare to get out, and then I'm going to do this full time.
We had some business ventures when we bought some the bracelets. We were making the bracelets. We bought the printers to do that type of stuff. It was more of a design, right? The name of the business was G-Base Design. We thought G-Base was super cool, had ties and lineage to special forces and kind of my background, and my business partner, he was really good with Illustrator, and he can make some awesome designs and format stuff. And he had the technical expertise for that industry. Again, one of the things that kind of fizzled out, I never really addressed the issues. Going back to the earlier topic, which was I was still drinking. I chose career over family. I was the type of guy that, rock star at work, but, absent at home. I didn't know how to be present. I was stuck on the fight out of the fight and flight mode, right? I was just always upregulated. I couldn't just be normal. And that's something that, I kind of struggled with a lot, man. So I would drink. And it wasn't until once again, I'd step on my crank, and, this time it was serious. It was serious, and I had to do some self-reflection, look in the mirror. It drove me to some of my darkest times, contemplating end of my life, sitting alone a few years ago in my office with a gun in my mouth.
Oh, man.
Wasn't one of my proudest moments, and I had to look into my why. Why do I get out of bed? Why do I go to work? Why am I doing all this? It was my family. It was my kids. It was my wife, and not allowing them to experience walking in and seeing their dad's brains splattered against the wall on Veterans Day. Right. So I knew I had to do something, and I went into battalion, talked to my PA, and I rose my hand and said, I need help. I need help. It's beyond just the alcohol. I don't think that was a part of the problem, but it was deeper than that. That wasn't the core issue. I was using that to cope with something else. So I needed help. And, by the grace of God, I was able to attend the STAR program, Service Member Transition and Advanced Rehabilitation Program in Richmond, Virginia, ran by the VA. And they do a head-to-toe assessment. I was able to see all the doctors for all things physical and mental, and they really did prepare me for transition. I wasn't transitioned at the point, but I was medically retired. There was a lot of stuff going on that wasn't good. It was not good. And fortunately, I was able to, pivot from there and start becoming this better version of myself. I started focusing on faith, family, my wellness, and then eventually business. During that transition period of what am I going to do? I struggled with the identity of who I was. Warsaw's this badass Green Beret Ranger. That's just Warsaw. He's all Army. He's drank the Kool-Aid. He's all in. If you ever talk to the guy, that's his life. That is who he is. So I did struggle, seeing, what am I going to do when I get out? Am I going to go contract like the majority of guys do? Nothing wrong with it. I'm there, right? So do I go work for somebody, or what do I do? And that's when, I had that confidant, my next door neighbor, one of my best friends. I talked to him and I said, hey man, I'm about to transition out. Like, I've either got to start a business here to kind of keep me in Florida, or I'm heading back to California and I'm just going to have to figure it out from there. We sat down, and within a few hours, we had a business plan. And that was G-Base Tactical to fill a gap in the market for the airsoft industry in our area. And it was awesome. It was just awesome from the inception of idea to launching the business. It took 5 weeks. It took 5 weeks because we were waiting on the inspections from the fire department to come out. But within 48 hours, we had locked in the lease on the building that we were going to be operating out of. We had no wholesale accounts, and that's a whole nother story, but we figured it out. When your livelihood depends on it, you're going to do whatever it takes. You're going to figure it out. You're going to deal in solutions, not the problems. And it's okay to identify. I always tell everybody, hey, identify all the issues. That's fine. You're not going to come across as a negative Nancy as long as you deal in solutions. Come up with proper solutions for all this. And then we call it, risk mitigation. You have a semi-business plan. Maybe you know how to write one. Maybe you don't. Maybe you take something off online and use the template to go down things, and you'll start to identify these different risks and then how you're going to counter those risks with solutions. And that's exactly what we did. We were like, all right, this is what we have to do. This is how much money we need to invest. This is what we're providing. Here's our why. And then build a culture around that. And then rock and roll, see what happens. And that was the transition out of the military, About 10 months prior to getting out, we had launched the business. He really held down the fort while I was going to a lot of my appointments, finished the medical retirement, because those who have medically retired know that you really don't know for a fact if you're medically retired until the very end. There's a long process. You have to go back and forth, rebuttal. And then, eventually, unfortunately for me, it was in the favor of medical retirement that kind of, it made a lot of the sacrifices in the military worth it on the financial side. It was one less stressor and allowed me the opportunity to truly venture into entrepreneurship, because I wasn't just flapping out there financially all by myself.
Yeah, I didn't know. I mean, obviously, we hadn't talked about this before, so I didn't know a lot of those details. But I mean, thank God you're still with us. I'm grateful for it. And what an impactful story. I know it's going to resonate with a lot of people, especially, and not just military, but especially leaving something that you have sort of formed your identity in. This is something that I see, probably because I became aware of it. So I see it more and more. It's like, the red car, you buy a red car, see a red car everywhere sort of thing. But not just in military. I grew up racing motocross. I see it with a lot of professional racers, all sorts of professional athletes and other things within our community, like nonstop. But we have this common theme where we are very purpose-driven and missional. And so we put our all into it, and it becomes who we are. And then when it's time to move on, we have another calling. It's hard to separate the two. Instead of our identity being this purpose-driven, missional-driven, all that sort of thing, it becomes the Warsaw, the Green Beret, Warsaw, the Army Ranger, Warsaw, and we get the two confused. I did it too. I'm saying it from experience, and man, it can lead us down a very, very dark path, as you can attest, and you shared with us. What recommendations do you have for anybody going through that, whether they're a military veteran or not, but they're transitioning maybe from one career to another, career to entrepreneur, whatever?
There's a lot to it because it's so deep. It's very deep, right? You have to believe in yourself. Everything will buff out. You have to believe in yourself. One of the things that I wish I would have done was uncomfortably vulnerable, being able to share and talk about your feelings to a point that, it's not something that you want to share. I don't want to tell people, hey, I almost tried quitting on my life. Right? It's not fun. That ain't cool. But it's something that I have to put out there because it may impact somebody else. And when you're going through struggles, I showed a lot of signs. I have a very close friend who's also an entrepreneur, Green Beret, that I would share, hey, I'm freaking stressed out. But the way that it comes across, message sent isn't always message received in the same manner. It's like, hey, we're all stressed out. It's work. It's a stressful time of the year. We're about to go on deployment. And I was like, no, I'm really stressed out. And I showed signs. I mean, some of the signs were, I'd go on a 10-mile run, get back to the team room, crack open a beer. Beer light was always on in my team room. Always on. It got to the point where I started, gaining a little bit too much confidence and taking a beer to the 09 meeting. Oh, geez, taking notes. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Let me put that right down here. It's because I felt like as long as I could accomplish what I do at work to a very high standard, right? If I'm willing to put my name on it, then, I could get away with this stuff. But really it's a cry for help. It's a cry for help so it's just one of those things, whether you're on the receiving end or you're on the transmitting end of it, be uncomfortably vulnerable. Let people know, hey, I'm going through it. Devin, I'm going through it right now. It's tough. Let's talk about it. Try to gain some insight on your situation or provide that insight and come up with some solutions on what could help. Because one thing that didn't happen is I never made the phone call. Everybody always says, like, when you're in those moments, make the call, right? Well, when you're in that moment, you've already I have this decision tree in my head that I go down, and what if this and what if that and this and that, and it breaks down and the anxiety starts building up. I'm drowning in depression, and right. So it's just one of those things.
Yeah, you're past that.
When you talk to your confidants, it's let them know exactly. Don't sugarcoat it. You should have the confidence and the ability to share exactly what it is and what you need in that moment. It's not the end of the world. I really did think it was the end of the world. No longer would I be Warsaw the Green Beret, Warsaw the soldier, right? It was now Warsaw who, Warsaw what? But it's fine, because as purpose-driven people, we will find a new purpose, right? I had to shift it. And that's, as I mentioned before, of the career first, family second, it was the wrong thought process. It was the wrong priorities. So I had to start fixing things from the foundation up. And it started with my family. It started walking my kids to the bus stop. It started having real conversations with my children, real conversations with my wife, really being grounded in faith and family. And then from there, it was like, okay, well, this is going well. What else do I need to do? I've got to get in the gym. I've got to do some meditation. I've got to work on my breathing techniques to lower my anxiety. I don't want to be on all the pills that the VA provided me with. There's too many to count. So as I started working on those things, and I felt better about myself, and I didn't have to walk around with a fake smile all the time, that mask that I talk about a lot is, just because you're smiling and you're jolly, people don't know what's going on inside your head and what type of emotions or distress you may be in reality. You have to choose to share that. You have to choose to open up, be uncomfortably vulnerable so that you could deal with it. You have to raise your hand and say, I need help. I need to seek professional assistance to get me through whatever is holding me back. And you just have to take action. And that's one of the things I wasn't doing with my personal life. I thought it was just military, career, do whatever I have to do for the Army, and then move on to the next objective. Wrong answer, right? Go back to the foundation, build up, the purpose will come. And for me, it was, it's family, it's faith, it's my fitness, it's finances, it's business. And that's where I started growing, and my journey kind of taking a shift to this better version of who Warsaw is. Warsaw is now Warsaw, right? And he could do whatever it is that he wants to do in life, because as long as he puts his head to it, right, and puts the effort, then he could accomplish it. And that's something, once you go through deployments, you go through training. I mean, even from basic training, like if you made it through that, like you have it in you to be successful. You made it through high school, you got your GED, whatever, you made it through college. You have the ability to be successful. You just have to choose what it's going to be in.
As you mentioned, sort of figuring out who Warsaw is, having gone through a similar thing, I go deeper and deeper. And man, recently I've just been like, yeah, okay, but why? Like, what's the common theme here? What's the common thread here? And man, I'll be honest, the deeper I go, the more I sort of uncover about like who I am. And I'm like, it's just in me. Like, it's just who I am. Certain things, right? Like we'll talk like stewardship. Stewardship's one of those things. Like, why am I always so adamant on ROI on things, ROI on my time, taking care of my stuff, ROI on this, ROI. And for a while, I was like, what is it about this? And I went super deep, and it led me to my faith and stewardship. And I was like, it's what I'm made of. But understanding that is unlocked like a whole new power, because now I embrace it. I don't overthink it. And I'm not tying my identity to a certain thing or a certain title. It's like, man, I'm a steward. Like that's whether it's business, whether it's being a father, whether it's my time, whether it's money, whether it's assets, maximize it. Like, and there is no catalytic event or end result that I'm looking for in particular. Like, I'm doing it because it's who I am and I enjoy it. And it's made life a lot more enjoyable on the day to day as well, which I'm sure you've seen too. So Warsaw, you guys do the G-Base Tactical. You start this brick and mortar, and I'm sure there was plenty ups and downs with that. If you would share a little bit about that and sort of what that led to and where you're at now.
Some of the ups, like once you started off, you're in the ether is what I say. You're just all about it. You're all in. It's the honeymoon phase. You're a new entrepreneur. You just got your feet wet and you're running with it. What people don't tell you, especially for a brick and mortar store, is you make no money if people don't walk in through that door. That's
traffic.
Hard facts there. So that gets into, marketing. How do you market? Well, I don't market. I didn't get taught that. I didn't go to school for it. Then there's sales. Well, fortunately, my business partner was a car salesman and ended up taking over the financing department at the car dealership. He taught me a lot about sales. And it always revolves around, what is it that the customer wants? If you've got it, then, you show them the products and, they'll fall in love with it themselves and you'll be able to make the sale and you're making them happy, especially in a tight knit community such as airsoft, right? Because what we did was we had kind of the one department of airsoft, guns and gear. And then we had real stuff like real body armor, real brand name, pouches and plate carriers. So it was a little bit of both worlds kind of combined, which kind of fit our target audience. So that part was fun, learning all the different aspects, learning the books, learning the social media accounts and marketing and building this culture, giving back. There was a hurricane that hit Panama City Beach and, G-Base Tactical got a group of guys together and we went out for some of the recovery efforts, helping people out, moving trees out of the way, delivering food, moving resources from one place to another. It was something great. It was deeper than just airsoft and selling a product, right? It was really building this culture for the community that enjoyed airsoft, enjoyed military gear and equipment, and kind of running with that. So those were some of the highlights in the business. Just opening up the door, walking in. You're the one you're grinding out. You're the one sweeping, and you have to embrace those moments because one day it won't be you. It's going to be somebody else. But you have to really enjoy those moments of entrepreneurship because it doesn't always get easier. Now you're dealing with lawyers and tax attorneys, and there's just so much more. There's layers to it as you peel the onion back. But just the very beginnings of opening up G-Base Tactical was really fun. Some of the lows, when it was dead, when it was the season of people not really buying. You'd have a great December, but a horrible January, a horrible February. Now you start learning about consumers and how consumers act. And when they buy, they're waiting for tax returns. All of a sudden, there's a spike in March, right? Summertime, everybody's out of school. Now they want to buy a lot more. So it was just kind of learning these trends that was unfamiliar to me at the time and kind of honing it down, knowing when to promote knowing when to give discounts at these times, how to drive more customers, foot traffic into the building. So there was a lot of that going on. That kind of made us think sometimes when we weren't making any money of what are we doing this for and why? And the good thing is we had a good why and we had it written up on the board, in the back room of, these are the reasons, these are the top 3 reasons. And so it allowed us to persevere through those times. And then gets a little bit, deeper here. We ended up closing down our business. We tried selling it. It didn't pan out, and that's okay. We had a death. One of my chosen family members, my business partner's son, passed away, and we shifted our focus back to family. It hit us all really, really hard. And there was nothing more important than family. Nothing more important. We tried running the business for a few more months. The lease was coming up. It was, never a good timing for any of it. But we had built a good relationship with the owners of the building, and they understood the situation. We were able to sell $60,000 worth of our product in 3 days. Everything, all fixtures, just everything was gone in about 3 days. And we walked away clean from it. We didn't want to close it down, but it just wasn't the right time to keep it open either. Focused on family. And my wife and I had, serious conversations of, what's our next move? What are we going to do next? And it was, life is too short. Family is everything. And we need to be closer to our family. And that's when we decided to make the trek, the move across the country from Florida back to San Diego, California, where I'm currently located at, and starting over. So fresh beginnings.
That's awesome. What a blessing that you guys were able to, sort of wind it down and, like you said, walk away clean. Having anything brick and mortar, especially retail in this day and age. I mean, yeah, dude, being able to walk away scot-free is a pretty good thing, right?
It is.
So, man, kudos to y'all. So now that you're back in San Diego, I know that you started a group to help other military entrepreneurs. You got a few other things going on. Tell me a little bit about that. And I'd love to understand all the good things that you're doing with that platform and with those groups.
I started contracting, right? I started contracting.
That's right. We talked about
kind of a placeholder. Yeah, as a placeholder. But there's this entrepreneur in me that just wants to come out and play, right? He wants to be involved in all that. And I had a good conversation with my friend TJ White, owner of Whoopie Hoodie. And I told him, like, man, there are so many veterans out here, so many, active duty service members that want to get into entrepreneurship, just don't know what steps to take. And once you leave the military outside that 12-month mark, that's it. The resources kind of halt. And it's really who you know and what type of reputation you had while you were in the military that, people are going to be willing to talk to you and mentor you and guide you through the process. As simple as, how do you set up an LLC? I get those calls all the time. And I love it because it's like, I want to help the next person. Well, my buddy TJ was getting the same calls as well. And so we started thinking like, hey, how can we build a platform to help the masses, of veterans? And it's not just veteran centric. No, it's for any entrepreneur. Right. So we formed four founders of Military to Entrepreneur. 3 of them were in a mastermind already, which I've heard of masterminds, didn't really know what it was. And I saw the great things they were doing. So I get involved too. Right. I was like, I got to be in that room. And that's what we created with the 4 of us, is another room for those entrepreneurs that don't know where to start. Maybe they've been in business for a few years and they want to be around like-minded people, people with knowledge and experience to share, and a community that's going to cheer them on. Right. And as we built out Military to Entrepreneur, there was 3 pillars that really stuck out to us. And that was family, wellness, which is, the body, mind, and spirit, and business. And with those 3 pillars, you got to have those 3 pillars to be successful, or something's going to drop off. I'm not going to fall into the same thing that I used to do, which was career first and then family second, right? You have to find this balance. And I know that's, it's a touchy subject for a lot of people, that work-life balance, and how does it exist and what do you do? There's means and ways to go about it. And I just feel that if you take care of them all, maybe a little bit more time over here in the business, but then you're able to give back to the family over here, it all evens out at the end, as long as you don't just completely sever one of those legs or one of those pillars and try running with the other 2, or just one of them. Right. So military to entrepreneur, it's a mastermind. It's open to any and all aspiring and ongoing entrepreneurs that are out there. The four of us have combined service of 77 years. We have, one of the founders owns a tech company. The other has $6 million worth of real estate property. The other owner's Whoopie Hoodie. And then I have a few other ventures as well. So that's the military to entrepreneur. Everyone's welcome. And yeah, so I'm also a co-owner of Sentry Trading Post. And what Sentry Trading Post is a platform online website where we're allowing and offering the opportunity for any and all veteran-owned businesses to promote their companies on our website free of charge. They're able to post it on there. There are some tiered, marketing packages that go with it if you wanted to pay. But we said, hey, we want to be the Angie's List for veteran businesses. There's a lot of, while you're hanging out, in and around military bases, there's a lot of people that want to support local businesses. And there's those that say, hey, well, if there's, I'd definitely hire somebody that was a veteran. Well, here it is. Here's a platform, Sentry Trading Posts, for you to look up any business, any industry that you're looking at, any service, and then be able to contact them directly and go from there. So that's another venture.
So that's like is B2B or B2C. It's
yes,
like you said, it's like similar to an Angie's List, but for veteran-owned businesses. I love that, man. What a good idea. So much value in that to be able to connect, provide a platform, one location for everybody that is a veteran or affiliated with a veteran owned company to be able to like share that and just connect. Not saying that veteran businesses are the only good businesses, but I definitely take pride in being a veteran myself. And so, yeah, naturally, when I know you're a veteran owned company, I'm like, oh, okay, cool. It's not the end all be all, but it's a pretty neat thing. I love that. And pre-show, we were talking a little bit, and you're also working on a book right now too, right?
Yes, that's correct. So as I got involved with the mastermind that I'm in, I was, you get to build relationships with people, and one of those people is a book editor and could get the publishing done. And that's who I'm working with right now, Adam Davis, to work on my book on resiliency. No title yet, but it is something that I recommend to anybody that ever had an inkling of wanting to write their own book and share their story. We all have stories, and it's almost like a duty to share that story with others, because we cannot comprehend how many lives can be impacted just by sharing our stories, sharing, the hard times with the good times, what allowed you to be resilient, what allowed you to get through the toughest of times in your life. And that's kind of what I'm sharing in the book right now. And it's tough. There's a lot of self-reflection there. There's a lot of noticing the mindset shifts throughout the different periods of my life. Blaming others in the very beginning, like it's the world's fault or it's everybody else's fault. And then coming to the realization of like, no, I'm in control. These are my decisions. I have to live with them. But these bad decisions or these events that happen in my life do not define me. They don't define you. Just because people knew you doesn't mean that they know you today. Right? We're always growing. We're always bettering ourselves. And, as we continue to make those daily deposits, for our family, for our wellness, for our careers, and finances, that growth is real. It's exponential with those daily deposits. And I just can't say that enough, that you just got to stick with it. Everything will work out.
So as you're working through this right now, do you find writing sort of like therapeutic, or is it more of like kind of like a little bit of a chore to get it done?
So I just had a conversation about this yesterday, and not necessarily a chore, right? Not necessarily a chore, but there was some reservations, right? There's these emotions that come out when you're talking about the good times are easy. The hard times are a little tough because you're being critical of what happened, what decisions you made, the embarrassment, the guilt, the shame. But it's okay because somebody's going to resonate with that. Maybe somebody's going through that right now. It's a duty for me to be authentic and vulnerable, uncomfortably vulnerable through this journey of writing a book so that I capture it all. So I could capture it. The reader could really look at it and be like, yeah, you know what? I've gone through something similar. How did he get through it? And then I could kind of share, like I did this. I seeked help. I rose my hand. I had confidence, just because I talked to this person about this topic doesn't mean that it helps for a different topic. I have to talk to this other person. So it's just going through that. And so it's not necessarily a chore. It's more of a emotional block. It's kind of like, don't want to touch it right now. But as of yesterday, I'm learning to let go. It's okay.
Yeah.
It's in the past. Now it's all about helping the next person. It's not about me anymore. It's not about me. It's about the next person.
Yeah, I was just asking because I read one time that we all communicate. We have like a primary method of communication, right? Like whether it's oral, written, whatever. And man, gosh, as early as high school, I remember hating writing, hated it. But I don't know if it's just because it's been practiced, not just through schooling and stuff like that, but in the military. We did similar things. So there can be a ton of writing involved, right? I've just sort of like gravitated to it. And I could see, trying to put myself in your shoes, I could see writing almost being like a therapeutic thing to help you work through things, at least for me, because I think at this point, it's my primary way of communicating effectively. It's my preferred way for sure. You're writing this book. You're being vulnerable. You're sharing all this stuff. But I feel like along that journey, it's also changing you. It's also helping you. Do you get any of that from it?
It is. It is absolutely therapeutic to be able to put these thoughts that I've held in for so long, into word form, typed out on the screen, and then I could reread it and be, and that's where those kind of the reflection takes place of learning more of who I was and who I am now and where I want to be in the future and what's working, what didn't work in the past and things that I have to be conscious of not to fall into those same pitfalls. So it's definitely therapeutic. It lets me, I'm a very analytical person, Devin. I'm very analytical. So I need to know the details. I need to break it down into categories. What makes sense? What doesn't? What are the trends? What did work? What didn't work? Lessons learned. And then go from there, reattack it, cloverleaf around the objective a little bit. So that's
now I know why we were in the Fox course together.
Yes. So that's just my take on it. And it has helped me a lot. And there is growth. There is some real growth of just writing. Now I think about it, and I've shared with my kids that keep a journal, kids.
Yes.
You'll thank me later. Keep a journal. You could write down your thoughts. You could share it, because one thing I learned was you have to know how to off gas some of the stress, some of the, things that are bothering you. And if you don't know how to express it through words verbally, then that's when you'll see kids lash out or adults lash out. They'll drink and then they want to fight or something because something's bothering them. They're not getting down to the core issue. But if you off gas by keeping a journal and writing your emotions down, writing some events down that had happened, you're just whatever it is that you want, you're able to put it down on paper and kind of let it go. You come back and reflect on it later, but for the time being, you could let that go. You don't have to hold it. There's not this heavy burden on your shoulders like you're carrying, an 18 Echo rucksack. Right?
80 pounder, 110 pounder.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. So you're able to take some of those things out of your ruck put it on paper, let it go, and then come back and revisit it.
That's good, man. Do you find that it helps with your growth too? Because similar to like what you mentioned, I never kept a journal, but somewhere around like maybe 19, 20 years old, I wanted to be married someday and have kids. So I was like, I want to give my kids something to read. Probably because I don't have anything to read about my parents, like, nothing. And so I just started writing kind of like these key events. Like when I graduated selection, I wrote something in there about it. It's this big, but the feelings, the thoughts, everything that was going through my head. And, as I look back, there are things that are really neat, but there are some things that I'm just like, man, I thought that was big, or I thought that was like stressful, and now the growth just sort of like presents itself. I like see it because I'm like, man, I was stressed out about that. Really? And then I'm like, geez, if I only knew my problems that were going to be happening right now, or like growth, I'm like, man, I remember being so proud of that thing. And now, I'm proud of this thing. Do you see any of that in your writing as well?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yes, absolutely. There's a lot of things where you're like, why did that stress me out so much? And it was maybe because of the environment that I was in, the people I was hanging out with, external influences that really kind of shaped that situation, that made it so impactful, right? But as I look back on it, I'm like, everything's going to be all right. I was stressing leaving the military, right? And now it's like I have all this family time. I'm getting to do these business ventures. I have the support of my wife and kids. I'm closer to family. Like everything works out. You just have to stay the course, right? I would always say, I was told just keep rowing, and I say it's okay to just keep rowing, but look up every once in a while. Gather your bearings and make sure you're rowing in the right direction. As long as you're rowing in the right direction, you're good. But don't just keep doing the same thing and not getting the results that you want, when you could shift a little bit, 10 degrees, and you'd be right on. So
I love that. Don't forget to check your azimuth, check your bearing, look up, watch for the draw.
That's right.
I love it. All right, Warsaw. Well, on that note, man, how can our audience connect with you, keep up with what you're doing? Check out Military to Entrepreneur and the Sentry Trading Post. Give us a little bit of that info. I'll make sure we put it in the show notes as well.
Thanks for having me on. Anybody could reach out to me and follow me on social media platforms, Instagram, Facebook at Warsaw Del Rosario. Military to Entrepreneur is on Facebook as well. For paid members, we have a private group. We charge $100 a month. You get 4 Zoom calls, and it's an active community. It's a growing community, and you get to tap into the networks and resources that we've built out individually. And that's with 4 co-founders. So it's pretty vast. Sentry Trading Post, you go to sentrytradingpost.com and you'll be able to find us online. It's free to sign up, post your business on there, and ensure that you post a picture to the profile pic that's there. That way everybody knows which business it is, or we have a placeholder that's there. And then as we have some marketing funnels that are being created right now for Sentry Trading Posts, and it should drive a lot of traffic, and it'll, increase the SEO for your personal business and get more clicks and hopefully more business, increase that revenue.
All right. Well, there you have it. Warsaw, thank you so much. I am not surprised. I'm pretty sure this is our longest episode so far. I wish we could keep talking, but thank you so much for coming on and sharing it, and dude, being so vulnerable. Once again, man, leading by example. I appreciate it, man. Thanks again.
Hey, thanks, Devin. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. All right. Till next time.